Soaring inflation has pushed the cost of raising a child to historic levels, astronomical levels. You're not going to believe how much it costs to raise a kid. What's that and the implication? I've got that and more coming up. My name's Mike Bernard. I'm the host of the Wise Money Show. I'm also one of the certified financial planners right here at Korhorn Financial Group. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and smash that thumbs up button. Well, it should be no surprise, even though the number is alarming, how much it costs to raise a child has increased. We've got record high inflations going back, highest level in the past 40 years. And so, yes, right, we had this supply shortage with baby formula and a whole bunch of politics with that as well. But of course, diapers cost more. It costs more to feed yourself and feed your family. Grocery store prices, going out to eat, everything's costing more. And gosh, let's not forget your second mortgage when you have a kid is childcare expenses. That childcare, if you could go back and look over the past 20, 25 years, the rate of inflation on childcare expenses has been one of the highest of all categories. And of course, that's going up. And obviously, finding folks that can provide childcare, it's even harder. So labor shortage and all that sort of stuff has definitely kind of crunched the childcare industry as well. So there's no surprise. It's gotten more expensive to raise a child. But take a look at the data. It was released just a couple weeks ago. Now costs over $300,000 to raise a child, $310,000. That's a 9% increase from last time this was done, and so a couple of years ago. Get this, just 5 years ago, that number was closer to $233,000. That's, if you would have asked me before before all the inflation, I would say, I don't know, 250, something like that. 233 was the last number that I remember. That was from just over 5 years ago. And so over $300,000 to raise a child. What's the obvious takeaway from this? I think more Gen Z individuals are saying they're not going to have kids, and with prolonged adolescence, that answer hopefully will change. But I do think people will not have as many kids. Some, maybe more people will choose to not have kids at all. And while that's a very personal decision before finances, I'll get to that, okay? The finances certainly could spook some people and could kind of crowd out and influence someone's decision making. It's bigger than that. I mean, that trend, it certainly has been a trend, fewer and fewer kids being born per adult. But that trend plays into population growth rate, which from an economics perspective, if I can be really, really geeky, is an enormous issue, okay? Because projecting out the future growth of our population, that influences, needs for goods and services. And if our population is actually shrinking or it's plateaued, like it's been over in Europe for a long time, the long-term and future economic output might be stagnant as well, okay? So if you take a look at this chart, now I know we got COVID in there and a few other things that have influenced this, but the overall population growth rate, lowest level it's been in 100 years, over 100 years. So, and if the price to raise a child continues at these levels and sort of at these high levels, that certainly could influence the population growth rate. So some surprising news, okay? The saying that you're never financially, if you waited to have kids until you're financially ready, you'll never have kids. I mean, that's potentially the consequence here is financially. It seems like such a daunting issue, a daunting decision that many people might not have kids or will have fewer kids. Here's the deal. I've got 3 kids, and having a child is not a financial decision alone. There's some tag-along financial decisions, but it's much more than that. The joys of being a parent, joys of having children is real. Now, so is the sacrifice, so is the frustration, that's real as well, but the joy far exceeds that, and you know that, I'm sure you do. The personal growth of you becoming a parent and how that pushes you and stretches you is significant, right? It's significant. But so does, again, the joy that comes along with it, the selflessness that comes along with it. So if it was purely a financial decision, no one would ever have kids, right? Or certainly if it was purely financial, everyone would just have one. They'd realize, oh, I made a colossal mistake. That's it. And that's not the case. So the trick isn't to look at the finances and say, gosh, maybe I shouldn't have kids. No. The trick is to be aware of the reality of the finances and have kids, but be financially prepared. So how can you do that? As we serve new families, young families, as soon as they say, hey, we're expecting a child, well, if they express that our hope is to have children someday, then you want to be aware of that as you're staging your financial priorities, okay? You should have some additional urgency to getting credit card debt paid off, consumer debt paid off, building up that emergency fund, getting that stable financial foundation in place. If you hope to have a family someday, you've got to get a strong, stable financial foundation as soon as possible. Don't wait. There's some urgency there, okay? But as soon as we hear from a young couple, hey, we're excited, we're gonna have a child, or we're gonna start planning to have a child, then 3 budgets. And why 3? Because 4 sounded like too many. No, I'm just kidding. You need 3 budgets. As soon as you find out you're having a child, you need 3 budgets. And why is that? Number 1, what's your budget? What's your cash flow plan? What are your goals between now and the moment that child is born? Okay, so because your income will likely look the same unless someone's on bed rest, you might have some additional out-of-pocket expenses for health insurance, for copays, ultrasounds, that sort of stuff. But for the most part, that's crunch time. That 8 months, 7 months, something like that, from when you find out, that's crunch time. So what are your goals, and update your budget to prioritize achieving those goals. For us, I did this process of these 3 budgets. I realized the car loan that we had at the time didn't fit once we had a child. So therefore, in that 8 months, we had to figure out how to pay that car loan off. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2, we knew we were going to get showered and sprinkled, and gosh, people were just so generous, but we knew we'd need to buy a crib. We'd need to buy some of these high expense items. So we call that delayed spending, saving up money that you're going to spend in the future. And so we had to quickly build up some cash for those known upcoming expenses that we would purchase, in the 3rd trimester, something like that. And then also, my wife, there's no maternity pay or something where she worked, and so we knew that when she was out of work for those 3 months, we were going to need some additional income beyond just my income. So we needed to save up in advance to draw off of that during those 3 months while she was on maternity. I don't know what your situation is, what your goals are, okay? But those were ours. And you're gonna wanna build a budget where you've reoriented your cash flow to attack those goals and achieve those goals between the time you find out you're having a kid and when that baby's born. Second budget is that maternity budget, okay? And in that maternity budget, it's very possible you have less income, depending on your maternity plans, those sorts of things. It's possible you have less income, and possible you have new expenses, but not all of the new expenses. And what I mean by that, you have diapers probably, but you might not have formula. Right? And you certainly, if you're planning on going back to work, childcare, you likely won't have childcare during those 3 months. You also won't be going out to eat that much, although I would encourage you to do so. Get that baby out, get you guys out, getting used to being parents, and don't just stay sheltered, hunkered in. But you're going to have likely, in those 3 months, likely less income, some new expenses, but not all the new expenses. And then the third budget that you're going to build is life with baby, okay? And typically this is after maternity, okay? And if you've got one parent that's going to stay at home full time, then maybe you can get away with 2 budgets instead of 3. But typically there's a shift happens after maternity. Whether you go back to work full time or part time, that changes income, but then it also adds in a new expense, and that is childcare, which I typically joke about is like a mortgage payment. It's typically the second biggest. I mean, for us, it's the second biggest expense other than our mortgage. That's the reality. And obviously then that's not just a rounding error in your budget. You've got to build a budget, and you've got to make sure that all that fits. Hopefully in that budget you also are saving some dollars up for that child's education, or have recalibrated your delayed spending for the cost of a family vacation now that you've got an extra child. You've built in there the higher expense for health insurance, because obviously that changes after the baby's born. So building that 3 budgets gets you proactive so that you can get a glimpse, not a perfect glimpse, but a glimpse of what's ahead financially, so that you are prepared and are caught, I would say, less off guard. There'll still be surprises, still be changes that you'll need to make, but getting proactive and projecting out what those expenses are helps you prepare significantly. So don't be overwhelmed. Don't be discouraged even by the cost, these new projections of the cost of raising a child. Don't be. It's just the reality. Everything gets more expensive, okay? If we put a price tag on, here's how much you're going to spend on health insurance, here's how much you're going to spend going out to eat, here's how much, if we did a cumulative study on all of that, you would never get out of bed in the morning, okay? So don't be discouraged, don't be overwhelmed by the higher price now of raising a child. Get prepared, be planful, work with your certified financial planner. If you don't have a CFP that can help you through all 6 areas of your financial life, because when you have a child, you've got to look at how will this impact all 6 areas of my financial life, health insurance, estate planning, those sorts of things, right? You work with a CFP that can help you with all of that. If you don't have one, you can work with one on my team. Find us online, Korhorn.com. That's Korhorn with K, wisemoneyshow.com. You can find us there as well, or give us a call, 574-247-5898. All right, there you have it. Go out and take your next wise step in your financial life.